We are at risk of having a flat Earth report come out of the House Intelligence Committee as to what happened with Russia.
A flat Earth report. That's those are striking terms.
All right. Hey, thanks for joining. I just sent out notifications to Patreon. Shout out to Representative Swalwell and Rachel Maddow. Thanks for the sound bites. And MVP for that track. So let's see. AJ206 says today is my 33rd birthday. Awesome. Happy. What do we call this day? There's got to be a special date for it. For most people, it's like, I guess it's the day that you transcend the matrix, you're let in on the secret, you're let in on the club. This is the year that the Illuminati are going to knock on your door. Mikey Bear says best stream on earth. JT says Joey in his pants. Oh, Joey Roca? Oh man, that guy's such a cheerleader. Nothing against male cheerleaders, but I don't know. He's a little lewd, but I don't know. We're talking about a stream we're watching, which is, I don't know if it's over. It was putting me to sleep, so I was like, let's just go ahead and start this already. So for the last few days, I've been talking about the damage control. Got my notes here. So this is rolling ready to do damage control over Jake Bird. And my initial comment was, you're going to critique Jake Bird, a professional clown, a buffoon, who was at the Flat Earth Conference there to make them look like idiots. You're going to call him a buffoon and a clown, but I thought you kind of had the same gig. It's like, who's really buffoon? Who's more of a buffoon, this Jake Bird or Reddy? And so we're going to go over this because they actually addressed all of this. Russian vids, who Rick refers to affectionately as Ben. Turns out they've known each other since before the Earth was flat. Just a little tidbit. Quite a lot here to go through. Before we get started, though, I want to give a shout out to Nathan Thompson, the Flat Earth's biggest jerk. I've never seen anything like this. I thought he was bad to that guy at the cafe, the NASA guy, but...
You told me to fuck off. You said I'm a dipshit.
Yeah.
Why?
Fuck off.
Hello.
So here's Nathan Thompson bullying somebody, I guess a cashier, at Whole Foods. And it's pretty bad. It's the usual stuff. He's just being smug. He's being aggressive. He's criticizing the guy's looks, his breath. It gets pretty bad, and no one sticks up for this guy. So he kind of gets a little triggered, as you'll see.
Tell me about your
Breathe
breathing.
in that bad breath.
This is our globe heads right here. This is how they act in public.
Anyway, it's not really pretty. But he titles it, Globehead Loses His Mind at Whole Foods. And I'm like, who is Nathan Thompson to go around agitating like this? The last video I saw of Nathan Thompson, he was kicking down the door of some single mother until the woman's 2-year-old said, leave my mom alone. And I'm like, what the hell? This guy doesn't represent us, just so you know. We thought he was sane. We invited him to a conference to debate Mick West. And I don't know, you're going to be a Bible earther, you're going to whack people over the head with your Bible. I'm pretty sure it's pretty critical. I'm not sure. What does the Lord say about drunkenness? Anyway, what's worse, though, is Nathan Thompson's followers are just as bad as he is. So there's 10,900, and I'm guaranteeing every single one of them is going to side with Nathan. No way that's a man. That man is menstruating. You're sure that's a guy. What a jerk. He looks feminine. Laughing you're a genius, Nathan. How did you get him to stay on camera? That's a living demon, says Jesus Saves. You made him mad. Dude is spiraling. People like this are insane. Too much estrogen. Anyway, they're basically misgendering the guy and piling onto it. Now, is he mental? I don't know. I don't really think so. I think what we have here is someone who is being provoked because there's a camera in his face and he didn't want the flyer. And so Nathan is definitely egging the guy on and trolling him here. It's really bizarre.
You can believe it with no good arguments.
Okay, so let's move on. Just wanted to mention that that's really just the type of stuff that I'm saying is like not representative of sane people who question things, especially about the MSM. And this is the type of person they want in front of it. That's why he was at the conference attempting to start fights. Okay, so I'm going to go over the whole thing here. I'm not going to actually play the video because I think it's still live. But, I was expecting damage control, blame shifting, shame on Jimmy Kimmel, shame on Jake Bird, and we actually did get somewhere here with this. So let's start off. Just various quotes here. It was about a 25-minute backstory, very boring. If you want to hear it, you can go over there and listen. Rick was a class clown. He says, I know people are suspicious. Guess he had a pretty good past. He was warned about how bad Hollywood is. A whole lot of, like I said, blah, blah, blah. He was a ghostwriter. Will Smith's storyboarder. Here we go. The goofball, that geek Jake Bird. So about 30 minutes in they get to this point, and this is where Russian Vids calls him a goofball and a geek. And he says, full disclosure, you do know Jimmy Kimmel from a few years ago, says Russian Vids. So Russian Vids points out that Hummer has actually known Kimmel before. That's kind of interesting. As you know, he describes, he crossed paths with Jimmy Kimmel's cousin, dated the cousin, so he moved in those circles. Doesn't mean anything, it's just worth noting. Then he met Rob Skiba. They talked about Flat Earth, worked with him on a seed project. So Rob Skiba had a project called Seed. Not sure exactly what it is. I think it has to do with, here we go. It's on Amazon. We'll take a look. Seed. This book features the television formatted scripts, the first 4 episodes of his science fiction Seed. It includes, I want to see what it's about. The keys to the future lie buried in the past. Well, basically what we're talking about is a documentary they got involved with. It was pretty bad, pretty boring. I think they called out Flat Earth Reset. People were asking for Rick to do the Roland Hummer live. He talked about the Roland Hummer character, or Roland Reddy. He didn't seem to want Roland Reddy to be compared to Jake Bird. He mentions conspiracy theories. Rick Hummer describes there's a lot of conspiracy theories about him, suggesting he works for Disney, the Mennonite Mafia, and many others, which shouldn't really, be a surprise. If you make any content, people can make up stuff about you. After the Logan Paul thing, he felt duped. Any press is good press is not something that Russian Vids agrees to anymore. So this idea that any publicity is good publicity, they don't really stand by it. And Russian Vids felt it was a little odd that you had 2 in a row, meaning Logan Paul and then Jake Bird, 2 clown acts. Really, and Owen Benjamin really doesn't come off so bad after all this. He's just a comedian. These were more acts of sabotage. And here's the main point. The main point is this. And I'll skip over to the main point right away. The main point is Hummer and others there didn't know that Jimmy Kimmel was going to do this hit piece. They weren't in the know. And so they were put on national TV and they were clowned, and they feel like it jeopardizes their careers and their standing in their communities, and they didn't know. And that's the main thing. 1, they didn't know. And then 2, they were lied to repeatedly. And they reiterate this. They were lied to. Rob Davidson actually said that he didn't know that Kimmel was there. He thought it was ABC because they disguised themselves as ABC. So you have this undercover crew, and Robbie says he's not in the know. These guys are mad about it, and it was a guy named John, and then he's the floor manager, and then you have Rick Hummer, who's rolling ready or whatever. But they weren't in the know, so they had to beg and plead with the producers to blur their faces out. And that's why Hummer's face was blurred out, because he didn't want his face attached to a hit piece. So here's where it goes wrong. Where it goes wrong is Robbie Davidson's wife actually spills the beans and says, no, we knew 2 weeks ago. They already knew Kimmel was going to be there. Robbie helped organize it. And they reiterate this. Robbie and Jimmy Kimmel's team worked together on that jackassy skit. Now, we already knew that Mark was working with them too. We already knew this because we had a caller. But that was kind of really what shocked them, because they were told point blank multiple times that he had no clue. Then they find out he did know. And of course, like I said, Robbie's wife spilled the beans. And John in particular was mad. And I don't think John was supposed to be on the phone. It was between Hummer and Russian Vids, or Ben. So Ben and Rick, we'll say. Ben and Rick are talking, and Rick has to go to the bathroom. And so he puts John on the phone. And John's the other guy who was on the show without any permission. And we'll get to this, but it gets ugly. So let's continue. So apparently, behind the scenes at the conference before Logan Paul showed up, they were hoping it was Robert Downey Jr. And by the way, Hummer also says his movie is not about goofing off. So he did want to make this distinction. Rollin' Ready is not Jake Bird. So he wanted to make that clear. So Hummer's involvement was this. Since he's the MC of the event, and he had an agreement, he and the guy John had an agreement in advance with Robbie that there wouldn't be any type of Logan Paul events or fiascos. So he was trying to kick them out. He thought they were ABC. He said they had multiple badges that were covered up. And it took them some time to figure it out that it was Jimmy Kimmel. But then here's where it takes a dark turn. So Rick Hummer says a lady was grabbed and sexually assaulted by Jake Bird. He, quote, grabbed a woman and held her breasts. Now, Rick described him as a character he saw as being a little bit challenged. So he kind of, he thought that Jake Bird was, definitely a fool, which he was. Okay, let's move on a little bit. He said he had his wig on when Kimmel went live. So he was actually doing his Rollin' Ready thing in between introducing speakers. So he was in character, he was in his wig and buck teeth, ready to do his thing. And he saw that these ABC people were following the guy with the crutch around. So what we're arriving at here is that Robbie Davidson had an agenda. He followed it. He allowed Bird and the Kimmel team into the building against the agreement. So why would he have kept this a secret from Rick? Because here's the other part about it. Apparently, the other people, the other speakers, knew about it. Presumably, Karen B knew about it, and many other speakers. I think she knew about it because she was on camera. She got a cameo behind Mark. My point is, Rick wasn't in the know. John was not in the know, but many others were. They knew that they were going to be sabotaged by Kimmel. So I'm curious to know, who beside Robbie Davidson knew Jimmy Kimmel was going to pull this stunt? They did not address the guy in the fat suit that we know to be Alex Jones, which is hilarious. It really is in retrospect. Like, good job, Bill Hicks. You got a death-faking deep faker trolling the flat earth. But that's not what we're talking about right here. Of course they didn't bring that up. Okay, so John the cop says, we're no longer going to allow Logan Paul to show up, and they want to put down this lie that any press is good. And the reason why Hummer believes he wasn't told is that if he had been told, hey, we're going to be clowned by Jimmy Kimmel, Robbie would be left without an MC. So now it actually seems that Hummer is not part of some takedown of flat Earth, but he might actually be a genuine victim here in this case. And again, this idea that we're not going to allow another Logan Paul thing to happen, I'm like, well, didn't you see Owen Benjamin coming? Which they do address later. By the way, hello in the chat. It looks like we've got about 75 domestic terrorists here. Let's see if I've missed anything in the comments. Yeah, Marge says any publicity is good publicity, or Sergeant Narc Sergeant, excuse me. And yeah, that's just not true. It's definitely not true. And it gets worse. The worst is yet to come, so we're going to get there. I'm just going to see if I've missed anything in the comments here. I just turned my comment box on. Rome says, Patreon is why I'm here. Best $1 I ever spent. Yeah, if you're on Patreon, you get notifications. And I'm going to do better to write in advance in the Patreon notices what we're going to talk about. I'll include numbers and links. Now, there was talk about how some people were just there all about getting interviews, trying to be famous, trying to be stars. They didn't really name names. So I'm not going to speculate on who the star might be, or the diva. I'm not going to speculate on who the flat earth diva is. I think you can all figure it out for yourselves. So what they were talking about, here we go. Hummer says, flat earthers were looking stupid on national TV. No, John the cop. Flat earthers were looking stupid on national TV. His and Hummer's jobs were put into jeopardy. I'm like, wow, Rick got rolling readied. But no, this is a totally separate thing. I see a difference here. There is a difference between making a movie and doing a hit piece. And this was just a one-time hit piece. So here's where it gets kind of bad. So an attendee filed a police report against this guy at ABC. This is the attendee I mentioned who was assaulted. And this is where John says the organizer had her thrown out. And I'm like, what? So if you remember, if you keep up with the only relevant flat earth channel aside from mine, or the only channel that addresses it that's relevant, Troll versus Trolls. If you watch Troll versus Trolls, you would know that the police were raiding Robbie Davidson's hotel room. And we're like, what's going on at the hotel room? There was one video where Cringe B was staggering drunk down the hallway. And someone taps her on the shoulder and they say, hey, the cops are raiding Robbie's room. And she's like, oh, what? Like, if you remember that, well, this is your answer. So apparently, Robbie didn't want her to file a police report against the groper from Jimmy Kimmel. And I'm pretty sure this is going to come out. So this and I don't have the person's real name. So we'll say a crew member from ABC or somebody who was part of a skit sexually assaulted a ticket holder. Hey, thanks. It took a long time. Sorry, I got to take a break for just a second. Jose Martinez finally got his Joker painting. It's because you're way out over there on the Sagittarius arm. That's why. Just surprised me. You're just like up there in Colorado. The NSA probably had to take a peek first. Who knows who's going through my mail? Okay, so Robbie tried to have the accuser thrown out. Robbie actually tried to have the woman thrown out of the conference. A ticket holder gets groped in a bad way by a crew member from Jimmy Kimmel, and Robbie Davidson tried to throw him out. Marty Moose says, get Chris Hansen to talk to her. Yeah, well, hey, phones are open. And by the way, Sagittarius Arm, if you have a link to the video where you have the painting, please show it to me. Someone else sent me some photographs today of a painting. I did a painting of a banana duct taped to a wall. And they took the painting of a banana duct taped to a wall and they put it on I think it was a tree out in Australia. Hey, this is interesting. A Call Day 2323 says, Alex and Owen Benjamin are buddies and Owen hosted InfoWars. Yeah, they had some fake beef a little while ago. I even suspect the Joe Rogan beef is fake. I think it's all a ruse. But that's interesting because, someone in show business like Owen Benjamin would know all about special effects, makeup, fat suits, pregnancy suits, and all the rest. And so it kind of fits that Owen would be there and Alex would be there. So let's continue. So this person assaults this woman. and Robbie tries to have her thrown out by the Texas trooper, who you saw on the TV show on Jimmy Kimmel, that trooper. So John says he confronted Robbie, and Robbie tried to separate her, and she refused to go and said, I want to stay with John. She didn't want to go in a room alone with him because, of course, she had just been, more or less molested. So she would not go in the room alone with Robbie. It's not suggesting he was going to do anything, but she was just being smart. Now, John reiterated, Robbie Davidson fist bumped Jake Bird. He fist bumped Jake Bird. Robbie said, he's good. He's good. So that's interesting. So John is saying Robbie just didn't tell us. They threw Robbie under the bus after this. He goes on to say, she made a police report. I went with her to Robbie at the end of the conference. And he looked scared and he tried to pull her away. Now this is where it gets really weird. So John the cop and the victim are hanging out in a room with Robbie Davidson. She just made a police report. He says Robbie looks scared and tries to pull her away. He's running around the table. So apparently this woman is on one side of the table, Robbie's on the other, and he's trying to get to her. His eyes are, quote, bulging. He's, quote, acting crazy, making weird noises. And John says, quote, dude, you're going to settle down and talk to her or you're going to get sued. Quote, Robbie's making weird noises and she ran. And he kept on going. He was ghoulish. That's what he said, ghoulish. Now, that was at the end of the conference. So then after the conference, John said, I've been trying to get in contact with Robbie, but he's nowhere in sight. He seems to have checked out. Russian Vid says, quote, Robbie, I need to say this. After that fiasco with Logan Paul, you told me that you would tell me next time you had a celebrity. Not a knock on Owen Benjamin and people walking out, but you never got back to me. Goes on to say, or John goes on to say, the language that was used, Robbie told me Owen Benjamin is coming, didn't mention there was going to be comedy, or that he'd be talking about oral sex and copulation when we're supposed to be talking about the creator. He's talking about hand massages in Walgreens. Now they use hand massage as a euphemism. And then, of course, there was a song that Owen Benjamin sings called hand massages at the Walgreens. I don't know if you guys heard of it. I never heard of it until I saw it live. And I'm like, whoa. Owen Benjamin is singing a comedic song about groping somebody at a Walgreens. And everybody's singing along, even Bob, front row, singing and clapping along. I got a hand job at Walgreens. I'm like, what the hell? How do they even know the words? Anyway, that really put off John. Anyway, so Hummer says, I was told it was going to be like a podcast, not a stand-up, not risque. So where he went, I had to make an apology. Globebusters chimes in, OTPHJ, which stands for Over the Pants Hand Jobs at Walgreens. John remarks, Owen also dropped the N-word, which was used against him, as I said it would be. Let's see, Hummer says, and this is just boring, but at this point Hummer gets into, I don't think the guy was as funny, but I want to take him camping. Now, John says, did Robbie apologize? Did he apologize? And apparently he did, but the way he apologized was, sorry, Rick, I dropped the ball. And Rick said, you didn't drop the ball, you scored a touchdown for the other side. You fist bumped Jake Bird. Hummer then said, quote, he's fake, dude, the whole thing is fake, I'm glad it's over. Russian Vid says, I'll be talking to him pretty soon. John remarks that there has been no response. It's been several weeks. He was upset that Jimmy Kimmel put him on national TV and he had to be very persistent. He had to beg to not be put on television. He said, I was lied to my face. I hate liars. Don't lie to me. I was maligned. I was lied to my face until his own wife leaked it that they knew a week in advance at least. And he told me, I didn't know, man. I thought it was ABC. So Robbie literally said, I thought it was ABC News. That's a blatant lie when he knew in advance it was going to be a sabotage act. So John goes on to say, whatever is being said by Robbie Davidson, I did confront him as the floor director, and I'm told that one of our attendees was sexually assaulted by one of their crew, and then I was unknowingly put on national TV to be made into a fool, no consent. So I'd say that's a pretty valid complaint. Lied to. And who did know? I would like to know. Who knew about this act of sabotage? Apparently these guys weren't in on it. Hummer wasn't in on it. John wasn't in on it. Who was in on it? Did Bob know? It's a fair question. Did Karen B know? Fair question, right? Did Ace McLeod know? Who at the conference knew about this? Or was it just Robbie? Like, is he going to be the scapegoat? Is he going to take the blame? Or are people going to be honest and say, hey, we're all sorry, Rick. It wasn't just Robbie. I kind of think it should come out. Sagittarius says, the space mouse delivered my Joker painting in the Sagittarius arm. Yeah, if you're wondering what he's talking about, the flat earth paintings, not really flat earth, it's flatearthstudios.com. Most of the paintings are actually just random stuff. He's talking about the Joker paintings. I did a collection of them. If you go to flatearthstudios.com, I have a new section up where one of the ways that I'm funding this channel or financing this, since I can't be monetized on YouTube, is I'm selling original art. Here's a link in the chat. One painting will pay my internet bill, usually. So these are some private commissions I've done in the past. I'll copy existing paintings, I'll adapt styles, pretty much movie posters. I have one I just completed for someone, which I'm putting a frame on and shipping out tomorrow. This particular one that I linked there at flatearthstudios.com does include a frame, and it includes the shipping time. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of it. I just wanted to do an after review of the damage control with this Jake Bird thing, and so in the end, Robbie has been thrown under the bus. I don't think they can fix this. Really, nor should they. I mean, what else is there to do? At none of these conferences have they even talked about the Edge. And they blackballed Mad Mike Hughes, the guy who's going to bring an answer to this thing in what, like 9 months anyway? So, thanks for joining. On Sunday, we are having something going on. It's another Zoom conference you might want to take a look at if you go to infiniteplanesociety.com. Right below the embedded video, you can take a look for yourself. It's called Death, Fakers, and Deep Fakes. It's going to be about 3.5 hours. It's going to be a presentation where we talk about suspected death fakers, new identities, the narrative structures that tie it together, the symbolism, the role of theater and government and how they kind of mix, celebrity idols, celebrity worship, multiple roles in the world stage. If you're a member at Patreon, you got a link with the discount. Observer Jones says, I got my ticket. Appreciate it. Yeah, so basically what we're going to do is make sense of it all, because I really think we can, and I think it has to happen. We've been discussing this stuff for almost a year now, almost daily, so I want to bring it into something cohesive, kind of like what we did with the NASA and the cult of the obelisk. And then, of course, if you show up for this, you will also get a download of the book Deep Faked. So thanks again for joining. I will see you all later. I'll put a link if you want to attend that, and that's going to be on Sunday. I'll remind you tomorrow. Oh, one more thing. Tomorrow at noon, my time. So basically, in about 13 hours, we're going to be live. You don't want to miss it. I don't even want to name the person until it's about to go down, but we have a special guest tomorrow at noon. And the topic's going to be mud flood. So with that in mind, this is One-Eye Jack and the Shells, Mud Flood. And by the way, before I go, the only way you're going to be getting notifications is through Patreon. It's $1 a month. There's only 8 seats left on that. I thought I should mention that. And by 8 seats, I mean once we sell out on $1 tickets, it's going to go up to 2. So you might want to get in now. I'll put a link in the chat. And any of the music that we play on this channel, you can get access yourself. Just go to the main site, infiniteplainsociety.com, and we're putting everything into playlists. So I will again see you all later on. And if you're into the mud flood thing, you do want to listen to this next podcast. And if you have any questions, I'll definitely ask on your behalf. So you're going to want to be there live. So I guess that's it. I will see you all later. Have a great night. Jump to a conclusion that requires a leap of logic, a leap of faith, or an intervention of the supernatural. Clearly, there's no way you could have mud in vast quantities moving across vast distances. It doesn't make sense. It would have to already be there. The commenter says, I don't understand how a mud flood kill everyone but leave the buildings intact. Because gravity. They're inferring a whole lot from photos. We're just going to sink. And the only buildings that don't sink are the ones that have the foundations built down low enough, built before the last mud flood, maybe even several recents before, inferring a whole lot from photos. Okay, hey, sorry, if you're still here, you still there? Look, I kind of have to address this. I just got an email here. They said, hey, you got to go back and listen right now because this guy John is now talking about how he knows people who blew up at the Boston Marathon. Are you kidding me? Okay, this is going to be good. Look, none of this stuff exonerates anybody. I mean, this is just a circular firing squad between shills by all appearances here. So let's go ahead and see what we have here. This is absurd.
He threw like 15 bodies over a fence, and he goes, the reason he did it, he goes, I know that that people work at the facility for the concert. They leave their keys in the vehicle, so I threw those people over the.
Okay, let's see what we have here.
What happens above us? We have no idea and no clue.
I appreciate your stance, and I appreciate because I know you're doing the right thing. But I'm just saying is I've covered. This is transparent. Every single person we've seen on CNN, they're faking. So there's this one black guy saying, "Oh yeah, I was shot in the neck," and it was very, all the time he spent in the hospital. There's no freaking nothing wrong with his neck. There's some guy claiming he was shot up in the shoulder. He said he was able to.
Okay.
His friend put.
Yeah, it's being addressed. I just thought it was. I rarely hear this. It's been a while since I've heard a Boston hoaxer. You know, those guys kind of quieted down. The Sandy Hookers are pretty vocal still. The Parkland crew, I think they kind of. No one's really interested in them anymore. but it's all